Life can feel like a wrecking ball at times, swinging around, aimlessly knocking down dreams, putting us off balance and out of place. But as the saying goes, it's not what knocks you down, but how you get back up that matters. And this story of grace is no different. In today's episode, I'll be talking with Erin Wilson.
Hey.
And she will share how she fought to hang on when life came battering in like a wrecking ball. Well, hello, Erin. Good morning, and thanks for coming out today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Any big plans for the weekend? Are the boys still at home asleep?
Nah, I'm kind of a workaholic, even if it's just cleaning the house. And my boys are in Alaska.
Alaska? Like, what's in Alaska other than beautifulness?
Well, my son graduated in May, and so my parents, his grandparents, decided for his graduation gift that they would take him to Alaska. So my husband and my son and both my parents are in Alaska. I needed to work. And so I am the pet sitter as well as the house sitter.
But you're always the pet sitter.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, but wow, that's a pretty awesome gift. Now, it's a long ways away from Louisiana right here. But that's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. How long are they going to be gone there?
So total, I think it's 3 weeks. So they should be back like mid-June, sometime like that.
Yeah, awesome. Wow, that's a great trip. Well, cool. Okay, so are you ready to share your story?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So currently you are 37 years old, right?
Yes.
Okay. So take us back to the beginning. Where does your story start?
Well, it depends on how far you want to go to back. But basically, back when I was 19, I was involved in a very serious 18-wheeler accident.
Man. And I've heard that part before, but man, that still blows me away to think about just that happening and being that young and having that kind of a wreck. It's not just a regular car accident, which that's enough for anybody, but an 18-wheeler. Wow. Like, how severe was that wreck?
So I was what's called T-boned. So I was hit on the driver's passenger door by a fully loaded down 18-wheeler. He was carrying a truckload full of tiles, like cement tiles. And I was unconscious for about, I think it was 18, 20 hours, something like that. I broke my pelvis, my lower spine, all the ribs on my left side, some of them twice, dislocated my shoulder, my knee, punctured both lungs, collapsed both lungs, punctured my intestines, my liver, and my kidneys.
So you were in great shape.
Yeah, it was pretty severe.
Yeah. Dang. And so where was Steven in all this? Like, were you guys like, did you know him at that time? Like,
so we were engaged. We had been engaged for about 6 months. And he's active duty military, and he was currently overseas in Turkey. So he was not in the States, but thankfully the commander that he was working under allowed him to take leave and come back and see me when the doctors said that I probably wasn't going to make it.
Wow. But how many days had you been in the hospital before you actually got that call?
So I had a wreck. It was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And the following day was Father's Day. And he had called my cell phone to get my dad's phone number to call and wish him a happy Father's Day. My dad is actually the one who answered the phone in the hospital and told my husband that I probably wasn't going to make it and told him about the wreck. And so then he went to his commander and got all the logistics and stuff worked out and got back to the States. And I think it was like 3 or 4 days before he actually got back to the States.
Man. I mean, I bet that was just like full of anxiety, not knowing like, had you already passed away? Like during that time?
Yeah, because when you're in the air and when you're in transit, there's no communication.
Even though that's really fast turnaround for the military. I have another friend that has a military husband, and it's hard, the paperwork and all, it's hard to go from one place to another. So 4 days is pretty quick, but still, though, on the other hand, life is in limbo. It's eternity.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's just a really tense thing for everybody. So you said you were unconscious for 20 hours. So how long it took you, like a whole day before you're able to come to?
Yeah, when I finally woke up, of course you've got tubes and everything everywhere. You can't talk because they had to trach me. So I was really thankful that in high school, I thought I was being smart and learned sign language instead of a normal foreign language because I thought I wouldn't have to learn grammar. I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I was able to sign with my mom because I had taught her some. And then I was in the hospital, I think, for a total of like 20 days. I was actually released on my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you turn like 19 or 20 when you got released?
I turned 20 when I got released.
Wow. Okay, so we're going to go back up a little bit for everybody and kind of share about your childhood for a moment so we can fully, what you just described is really traumatic. But I think this next part, when you kind of explain your childhood and what you were kind of training for, we kind of put the exclamation point on and what was going on. So what have you been training to do prior to this?
Be an Olympic fighter. I had tried out for the Olympics in 2000. Didn't make it, but was in the process of training and, going in that direction to try out again, as well as mixed martial arts fighting and seeing where professionally that would go. Yeah.
So any of that UFC stuff?
Yes. UFC, it's a mixture of a whole bunch of martial arts.
Yeah.
I actually did Muay Taekwondo, which is the martial arts from Korea, for about 15 years. And then I had opened up my own school.
Oh, wow.
And I had actually merged the school the year prior to the wreck with a friend who owned a mixed martial arts school. And he did Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and boxing, and had really started working with him and getting that portion of the fighting career started.
So more than a yellow belt.
Yes. Yeah. We can go that way.
Yeah. And I think, are there like different levels of black belts too? Or is it only to like certain? I know there's so many different types of martial arts.
Yeah. So it depends on the martial arts, but in Muay Taekwondo, there's different degrees of black belt. So yeah.
Did you have the top one?
I did not have the top one because I would be really, really old. I was actually a 3rd degree black belt.
Oh, that's wow. It's really impressive. Like, that's
Thank
awesome.
You.
Yeah. And what got you like started into that? Like, just is that something they had over? Because you're from Texas, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it have like a lot of like studios for that over there?
So Texas is one of the biggest Taekwondo competitors in the United States. And back in 1986, a whole bunch of Korean masters came from South Korea and took up residence in like the Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area.
Yeah. And
really started to branch out and build a huge martial arts industry there.
Okay, cool. So did you watch Karate Kid back in the day?
I did. It's kind of funny because I was not the nicest child growing up. And so, all the sports my dad tried to get me into, and all the sports I got kicked out of because of bad behavior. And
not Erin.
Yes. So he was actually recommended to put me in martial arts to kind of curb some of the aggressive tendency, get out some of the energy, kind of give more direction.
Yeah, a focus point. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Very cool. Man. So back to like what was just happening, at 19 and 20 for you. That wreck was more than just your broken bones, wasn't it?
Yeah. I had wanted to fight for my entire life and be an Olympic athlete, own my own school. Since I was in 2nd grade, I had that dream, and it was shattered in milliseconds.
Yeah, man. What were some of the difficulties that you faced like immediately afterwards?
So when I first woke up, They didn't realize my spine was broken because they were concerned about like the internal bleeding and all of the really important stuff.
Yeah, to keep you alive. Yeah.
Keeping me alive and remaking me alive. And yeah.
Yeah.
So they put me in what they were calling a clear tank. So the walls are clear. That way, if anything, or if I coded, anybody on that floor could be able to see what was going on and be able to provide assistance. But after they took out catheterizations, they said, okay, you need to get up and out of the bed so you can go to the bathroom. And when I stood up, I felt a heat wave go across my body and I collapsed to the floor. And they took me in to do another x-ray, and my pelvis from the ball joint to both sides of the wings was broke. And when I put weight on it, it slightly separated. And they also found that L4 or L5, I never get the right one, was broke. And so the doctors came in and talked to me after pain meds kicked in and let me know that I probably would not be walking normal ever again. I wouldn't be able to run, wouldn't be able to fight, and that I might use a cane for like the rest of my life. So with all of that came a lot of depression and sadness, and, my dreams are gone. And, if I don't have the ability to do what I like to do, there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was more a lot. It's a lot of physical pain and it's a lot of physical damage. But I think that the wreck was actually more emotional damage than anything else.
Yeah. Was God an active part of your life at this point?
No, not really. It wasn't until much later when I had my son. I kind of joke and people say, God knocks on your door. No, he takes, a battering ram or a wrecking ball and hits you and kind of puts perspective on it. So, I mean, he was there. He was getting my attention, but I'm stubborn.
He had to wrestle with you like you wrestled with Jacob, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And hey, I think he dislocated his hip as well. So there you go. Man. So you and Steven did get married.
Yes.
Eventually. So he stuck it out.
Mm-hmm.
Good guy.
He put up with me.
Yeah. So how long was it until you guys were able to get married?
So my wreck was in June.
Yeah.
And we got married in December. But after I got released, he was able to help my mom get me back to her house. And then he immediately had to leave and go back. And then the rest of the time, he was either overseas or in California until he came back for our wedding.
Wow.
And about 2 years later is when we were blessed with William.
Wow. That's awesome. But man, didn't you having a baby isn't that kind of like a miracle for you?
Yeah. So when I was in second grade, I was diagnosed with early signs of girly issues. And then when I was about 10 years old, I was officially diagnosed with something called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I was told that it was going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible, because of the level of the PCOS, to be able to have kids. So he's my little miracle man.
Yeah, man. And I think that's just crazy that you knew for that long, you knew from 8, 9, 10 years old that, that's probably out of the cards for you. How does it shape you as a young girl? I feel like it probably did, just because our culture for women is that's what we talk about. Well,
again, it's kind of one of the blessings about being as stubborn and bullheaded as I am most of the time. So of course, I want kids. I want 2, 3 kids. And, had names picked out, but also knew that it really wasn't in the cards for me. And so with teaching martial arts, I did a lot of the children's classes and I poured energy into a lot of the kids who were dealing with similar behavioral problems that I had grown up with and kind of helping them funnel some of that. But when I got married and my life took a complete turn, it became another passion.
Yeah.
Is wanting kids.
Yeah.
And you always have that in the back of your mind. Well, you were told you can't do it. You wouldn't be able to have kids. But then again, stubborn, bullheaded. Well, they tell me I can't do something. I'm going to try my best to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow. So when you had William, were you in Germany at that point? Like, when did you get to Germany? Because, your husband's still active military.
Yeah. So I was told we were stationed in California when I found out that I was pregnant and had William. And then when he's not allowed to travel until he's a month old. So the day he turned a month old was our flight to Germany.
That sounds like so much fun.
Very ironic, yeah, huh?
Yeah. a lot of sarcasm there, guys. Lots. Gosh, like just all the moving and then with the 1 month old. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you were still in recovery, right?
Yeah. So having William was a whole nother level of life-changing events.
Yeah. There's a lot more to your story here. So can you explain a little bit, like, in what ways?
So when I had my son, of course, because of the wreck, I have some scar tissue on my back and the hip being broke, he was a planned C-section. He decided that he was going to come early. So he was about a month premature. And when I went in, they tried to do the epidurals. Long story short, it did not work. But they were checking the back and they weren't checking the incision as well. My husband is actually colorblind. And I was so bloated and big and could not see my own incision that I couldn't check my incision. And I actually developed MRSA.
What is MRSA?
So MRSA is a type of staph infection that is not as bad as the flesh-eating bacteria that, you see in the movies, but it's right there. I actually, by the time that it was caught and the surgeries, I had lost the lower third of my abdomen all the way down to the organs from necrotic tissue. It had completely died.
Wow. That's just crazy.
Yeah, it was a whole nother level. In the hospital, I actually didn't get to see William after. So initially I had my son.
Yeah.
They sent me home after having my son. And then 2 days later is when I came in with the black abdomen and immediately went into surgery and started the first of many, many, many surgeries. And for about a month, maybe a little bit less than a month, I wasn't able to see him because I could have infected him. So I couldn't hold him. I couldn't see him, couldn't feed him while I was in the hospital with MRSA. So
it's just terrible. It's just, yeah, that's tough for a lot of reasons, a lot of levels there. Mm-hmm. How long were you in the hospital this time?
So the MRSA, I think I was in the hospital for about 14 days and a total of 4 original surgeries because they could not, they tried what's called the wound vac, which is like a sponge pulling out stuff, and it would fill up too quickly. And so they had to end up removing it. And so then they'd have to remove all the dead tissue again and try to close it and try to do the closure. And it's kind of funny. I can laugh about it now, but it was not funny then.
Yeah.
At one point they were doing what's called wet to dry bandages. And so that's when you stick sterilized gauze and material in the wound and you let it soak for however long. And then you pull it all out and do it again. So you're basically being stuffed like a teddy bear every couple of hours.
Yeah. Taking her stuffing out.
At one point, my veins were not allowing them to get any pain meds in. So at one point, I was being stuffed like a teddy bear with no pain meds. And the doctor looked at Stephen and said, "Oh, don't worry. This much pain, she'll pass out."
Oh my gosh. That's not what you want to hear.
Nope. I didn't pass out. I have a weird quirk that I'm in that much pain. I usually sing like Disney songs or something like that. This was actually like really old school church songs that I grew up with. Because that's the only thing I could remember at the time was church songs.
Wow.
Like Amazing Grace, Fill My Cup, Lord, stuff like that. And I was singing that while they're unstuffing me and stuffing me back up again.
Goodness. I mean, did that go on for like weeks like that?
It was days. And when they finally got it closed, they sent me home. But by that time, my little chunky butt of a son was over my weight allowance.
Oh.
So I could not pick him up. I could not get him out of the crib. I could not do anything. I could not hold him unless I was on the couch with a pillow on my abdomen. And then my husband or somebody brought him to me and handed him to me.
Mm.
So I was actually not allowed to pick him up until he was almost 4 months old. And by that time, we had already moved to Germany.
Mm.
So Stephen got to be mom and dad. And he had probably one of the best supervisors he has ever had because they allowed him freedom right before we, PCS'd, we moved to Germany to stay home and be that support and be that help.
Yeah, because that doesn't happen very often.
Not usually.
And it was really needed. Man, that's really tough, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned you were singing some like gospel songs or like church songs. So is this kind of where you and God became friends?
Yeah. So after my son was born is when I truly started looking for churches again. Because, you have a wreck.
Yeah.
He's like slamming into you. Hey, pay attention. This is where you're supposed to go. And still my stubbornness wasn't going in the opposite direction, but was not following him either.
Yeah.
But after my son is when we really started trying to get into the churches. There was a church in Germany that is really where it started. It's where my husband got baptized.
Oh, wow.
My husband grew up Jehovah's Witness. So getting him into the church was a little, slow moving. But I just knew that we needed to be following him and being in like a godly community and, building that. I was raised in the church growing up, but to me, it was something that we did on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you earlier, I was a little hellion kid and I was not very nice. And so most people didn't like me when it came to kids my own age.
Yeah.
And most adults, I was a big tomboy. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do and nobody was going to tell me different.
Yeah.
And so church was just something you went to on Sundays.
Yeah.
And then after about the age of 13, I didn't actually go to church. I worked there in the nursery. So I ran the nursery.
Yeah. I bet you did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But man, wow. So it really took, I guess now you're in your early 20s, like what, 22? 23?
Yeah, 22.
22. When it became like real for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, how did that come about? Like, was it the situation itself or what was it that drew you to God?
So God was the only thing that you can rely on after the MRSA surgery. My husband was this rock solid supporter. He even tied my shoes for 5 years with all the surgeries, because with all the surgeries from the MRSA and from other abdominal complications from that, it was a total of 14 surgeries. So he tied my shoes for 5 years, but he couldn't do anything inside my head.
Right.
The only one who could change the way that I thought, my feelings, was God. And he was able to like change the way that my thoughts were going, the way I felt about myself, and kind of pointed me in the direction of like using what I know and my knowledge and my abilities to help others. And every time I would, even do something small, like work the grill at feeding the hungry event that was led by the church, showed me that, yeah, you've had all these things and it's very limiting, and you're not doing what you should, what you thought was your purpose
at all,
and what you thought you were going to be doing. But when you do these little things, you see what kind of impact it has. And it's helped me see myself in a different light, hopefully kind of in the same way, God sees me. God doesn't need you to be the Olympic athlete unless that's his purpose for your life.
Right.
God doesn't need you to do this. He doesn't need you to do that. I mean, he doesn't need you to do anything.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of the way it helped me see how these little tiny things that I thought were so insignificant really can have such a massive impact and help me see myself for being a helper, for being somebody who can help other people.
Yeah. Being more than what you thought you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how have these events shaped your view of God?
So most people see God as this, lovable, merciful, gracious. He's wonderful. He makes everything green, bright blue butterflies, all this other kind of stuff. So for me, it's a balance. It really is. You have to see God for the wrath and for the judgment that he has the power and the right to give. Yeah. But at the same time, that helps you understand the magnitude of his grace and his mercy and his love for every single person.
Yeah.
If you don't understand his abilities of judgment and wrath and his power, you cannot comprehend how much of an opposite not really an opposite, that's the wrong word, but how the magnitude of his mercy and his love really is.
Yeah, like how much he's really holding back.
Right.
He's like, he could do this, but because of his mercy and love, he's not, but he could.
Yeah.
Has the right to. I think we forget that a lot too. Like he has the authority to, and sometimes I feel like, our sense, ours being mine, yours, humanity, our sense of like right and wrong is broken. Like it became broken since Adam and Eve. So how are we, we get all caught up sometimes and like, I can't believe God would do this or that, or I can't follow a God that would do X, Y, Z. But our compass on that is broken. So who are we to say what's right and wrong? We get it wrong all the time.
I think we get it wrong most of the time.
Yeah. And sometimes on purpose because we're just, and we don't know how to even, what's right for ourselves, So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up and said that. Yeah. Yeah. So what did you learn from his character? Like,
key word is persistence. God is so persistent. He will never give up on you, regardless of what you've done, who you are, where you are. He is going to be there for you, love you continuously. It's kind of important to remember that, we can't do anything for God. We can't give him anything. We can't do anything because it's all his. It's all his creation. It's not like giving our money to him would do anything. Giving our money, giving our time. It's his. We think it's ours. And so the thought of us giving it is a sacrifice to us, but we honestly can't give him anything.
Yeah.
The only one thing that we have that we can give to him in worship or in praise or anything is our free choice to choose to follow him and to build a relationship with him. That is a gift that he has given us, is the gift of free choice.
Yeah.
And so that is the only thing we can give to him. So,
yeah. I love how you were saying how persistent he is, because I would see that because how God pursues us, that relentless pursuit of us and our hearts, and how he just doesn't have to do that. But he desires that relationship with us for whatever reason. He just does. And he wants it to be real and authentic, like you were saying. Like he wants it to be our choice to want him, you know? And I think that's great that this one, for myself, you know, I would say like that's when I feel the most loved, is like when I feel that tug of like, oh, that's God getting my attention. That's him pursuing me, you know, when I'm drifting or whatever. And that's, I don't know, to me, it's like,
you're wanted.
A great sense of love. Then I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he pursued me to do that, you know, or to, you know, bring that back. That's awesome.
Love without free choice is not love.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were mentioning earlier about how God can help you like reshape your thoughts and the way you were thinking. Were there any special Bible verses that kind of helped like you to think that way or get that way, especially in the wavelength of God?
So probably my favorite Bible verse is Romans 12:2. It says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So most people who know me, even back from when I was, you know, child, even to now, know that I'm one that appears to try to go against the grain. When I was younger, it was going against the grain, but it was going in a very, very wrong direction.
Yeah.
However, now I feel like my past has given me insight in order to be able to help others. So sometimes if you're unsure which direction you should go, you just need to like bury yourself in God's word until he shows you. So in today's world, sometimes going against the grain is a good thing. Like you don't want to be part of this world in some of the mind thoughts, the way that the world thinks. Yeah. And so going against the grain, as long as going against the grain is going in God's path, that's a really good thing. But the only way you know if it's going in God's path is to be in his word to truly know what his path is.
Yeah. And being in his word helps you to know him, and, you know, the whole cycle goes. That's how you know what's his path. It's good to not be wishy-washy. Mm-hmm. And I think people who know you know what you stand for. And that's a good thing. We need more of that, more transparency of that as well. Sometimes it's hard to be transparent about where you stand on certain things. But I would say, I think for people who meet you, there's no doubt where you stand on anything.
No, I'm kind of open.
Yeah. So I think it's probably refreshing. Well, it is for me, because I appreciate that. I have a hard time, or sometimes I get tired decoding people. That's what I call it. I don't know what to call it other than that. But I know when I was a young person, I remember having conversations with my mom about like, why can't people just say what they mean or be who they really are about whatever? And it's taken a long time to learn how to be tactful or why that's even important. I even struggled with that. Like, why do we have to be tactful?
I've never understood the purpose of sugarcoating.
I've learned, in the last few years, which that's probably telling, I was like, oh, I've learned to see it as like, that's being kind and gracious, but it took a long time to see it that way. Like that's, this is the gentleness and to others, and that's what brings people closer, or that's what draws them in, is the gentleness and kindness of words. And ultimately, because that's how God is with us. Like he's not always harsh with us. It's, there's even a verse somewhere like in the New Testament, this is the kindness of God that draws us into him. And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of truth to that. But it took me sitting on that and really thinking back on that before. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I should be. Or that's the purpose in it, because I already trained myself before then, like, oh, I got to filter whatever. Mm-hmm. But still, it's exhausting sometimes having to put a filter on others and like figuring out, okay, I know they're saying this, but what do they actually mean? Mm-hmm.
I love your term decoding people, because that's truly what it is. It's taking in all of the information. Mm-hmm.
The tone, the body language, mm-hmm. all of it. And you're like, okay, I know we said and your face was doing this, but I think you meant something else. So how should I respond accordingly?
Right.
That's hard for me. I don't know. I don't know what that says about me, but that's true.
I think it's hard for everybody. And some people, myself included, give up on trying sometimes. And it's like, okay, I'm tired. Let's just Let's just be blunt.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that God has his grace for us. He does love us and, does pursue us and all that. So it's great. So my last question for you is, what would you say to someone that was experiencing a life-altering event?
To me, it really depends on the person and kind of where we are in our relationship with each other.
Yeah.
Like if I just met them or if I've known them for a while, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, pretend it's me. I've been in your house. We've known each other for 6 or 7 months now. Like, what would you tell me if I suddenly got hit by a wrecking ball?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is if you need anything, like even the shirt off my back, I will be there. I don't care what I have to do to be a support. The next thing that I would do is, have that rough conversation. Where are you in your walk with God? Do you know God? Because if you're hit like a wrecking ball, like I was, I died in the helicopter and they brought me back. So, that could have been like the eternal end to me. And eternity is a long time. Yeah. It's a very long time.
It is.
And if you truly have a relationship with somebody, you've built a relationship, you've had people over, you've come to some kind of relationship, even if it's just very surface level. If you care for that person, you're going to care what their eternity looks like. So having those tough conversations, it's hard. And in my opinion, you really have to have a relationship with someone in order to have those conversations. Because if you just go up to Joe Schmo on the street and you start having these conversations, there's a couple of outcomes. One, they're going to think you're crazy and call the cops. Two, they're going to think you're, pardon the phrase, a Bible pusher and just trying to push your religion on somebody else. But if you truly have a relationship with somebody and they truly feel like you care about them, or there is that trust in their relationship, even if you don't have a massive impact on their life immediately during that conversation, your relationship has been the soil over that seed planted in their life. Yeah. So that later on, wherever they end up, however God pursues them, that water can help sprout the seed that you have helped to plant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you never really know how much your words in that moment, impact a person. Because I've had several conversations with people where, in the moment, it probably seemed like we didn't get that far, but it stuck with me for months, years later. And it was something that affected and changed me. One time, this is 10 years ago, I had a person at the time, she just told me, I think you're wrapped up in your achievements. I think you're making your identity about that. And at the time, I was like, first of all, I didn't know what she's talking about. I was like, okay. But that's something the years later, I would sit on that and think on that and really well, am I living that way? And maybe I need to change some things for my life. But she never knew that. I think I told her that recently, but that was 10 years ago and I remember it. And so I don't think we realize too, that you can rest on things you do say do matter to people, whether you see it mattering in that moment or not. It does matter. And I think that kind of has two folds. One, be careful what you say to people. And at the same time, just be hopeful in that it will go somewhere. Because sometimes you're did that mean anything to anybody?
Some people ask the question, how do you know what you're feeling is from God or, this, that, and the other? And to me, I am so thankful that I have had those people in my life during the low parts, the wreck, the MRSA, and then all of the consequential surgeries over the 10 years. Yeah. There was always somebody there who, when I would get frustrated, when I would get depressed, they would talk to me, they would understand me, they would, sympathize, not really empathize with me, but they would also be pointing me back to God. Well, maybe you need more friends. Let's go to church and build a bigger, stronger community. Or maybe you're hanging out with the wrong people and they're kind of not helping you think the correct way. Or even to when I felt the lowest internally about myself, pointing me to some of those Bible verses that showed me that God doesn't see me the way I see myself. God sees me in a completely different way. And trying to wrestle through that, there was always that person planting those seeds to kind of help me in the direction that I needed to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if I had something awful happen to me, I'm glad I know you, that I know you'd be in my corner. And like when you were saying earlier, you would, be there and support any way you could. I really believe that. Like, I've known you for like 6 or 7 months, but like, I know that you would, because I've seen you, the way you serve people, in this time that I've known you, like that is something that you do. There is no obstacle for you in helping somebody. So I totally believe that. And I'm glad I can hear an honest rebuke if I needed it, and also an encouraging word. But you're also like, maybe so, but then not, I don't know.
It's not rude.
It's not rude. It's not harsh. I don't ever take it that way. I also grew up with a mother that was kind of more forthright in what she meant as well. So maybe I'm used to it. I don't know. But I don't ever to me, it's refreshing. Your words are not harsh. They might be true, but they're not harsh. Because there's a difference in being harsh, and that's not you. So I'm thankful I can get that from you.
Well, as long as my words come out in truth, God will have my back.
Yeah.
So the moment they're not truth, I lose all confidence that somebody's going to have my back. But as long as they're coming out in confidence, and you're not just saying something that's so true it's hurtful just to be hurtful, God's going to have your back. He's going to be persistent. He's going to support you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, Erin, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. I think it's just been a great story. I think your story is unique. I don't think many people have had these multiple types of traumas in their life. But yet I also think your story is relatable. I think at the same time, people have had trauma, or they've had these thoughts, they've had these struggles. And so with that, I think your story is inspiring and impactful to a lot of people. And I'm really glad you've been able to come out and share it today.
Well, I really appreciate you, inviting me out. My name is Erin, and this is my story of the middle.
I'm your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast. For extra perks and merch, check out my Patreon account in the show notes.
And we're going to end off with Psalm 40, verse 2. He brought me up out from a desolate pit, out of the muddy clay, and set my feet on the rock, making my steps secure.